Hi everyone, my name's Sherry and this is Practical Stitches. I have created a dress that will be free, that is free, the Louise Dress, which some of the versions are hanging up behind me. I will put some pictures up so you can see a young girl named Charlotte. She's modeling the dress for me. She was really good sport to do that. And like I said, actually her mother took the picture of the blue dress, and I think that's the best picture. So her name is Olivia. So show some love to Charlotte in the comments below. She did a really good job, and she was such a good sport. So the pattern is free. The links are in the description of this video. Just click on more on the title of this video and it should come up. It'll come up. The links for the pattern, which is 9 pages. It is in color. I apologize. I had to layer the pattern to keep the pages mount smaller. This is not my job, so I did my best. So you might have to trace a couple of the pieces or print some pages more than once. There's also instructions to go with this dress, which has the map of the layout of the pattern. And yes, I recommend that you print the instructions off, watch this video, and make some notes. I do sew this dress together in an unusual fashion. Because you know me, I don't really follow the way that everybody does everything. But there is a reason for it. I hope you enjoy making this dress. I look forward to seeing your versions of it, and I hope you make it your own. Okay, to start the dress, I am going to do all the fiddly pieces first. So I have my pre-cut binding here, the 1/2 by whatever the scrap was. So I'm going to set 2 pieces aside for the pockets. I probably only need 1 long piece, but these are quite long. I think I'm just going to set those aside for the pocket. And then the other one, the other 2, is going to be for the neckline. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew it together. So they're on a 45-degree angle. Hopefully you can see that. And I'm going to line the other one up, and they should be offset. See, there's a little dog ear there and another one here. That is exactly the way you want it to be. Now, if you don't believe me and think that's not going to work, we're going to sew from this intersection right straight to this intersection. And I'm going to stick a pin in here where the seam line is going to be and open it up. And those are lined up. So that's where I'm going to sew. And then I'm going to press this open. Now the way I do binding, I don't need to press it or anything. You can use those binding tools to do your binding. I don't do that, so This is as much preparation as I do. Sew it together, clip off those dog ears, and I just press that seam open. So now that I have all my binding together, you might have more pieces to do than that. I'm going to set that aside. Now I'm going to do the carriers. So the carriers are around 2.5 inches. Yep, 2.5 inches wide by 3 3/4, as you can see there. And we're going to press in 1/2 inch with the iron is easier. And I'm using a dark thread so you can see what I'm doing. And I'm going to do that for all 4. So I think in the directions it says to cut one strip and divide it in 4, or you can use my machine and that back stitch is making me crazy. So we're just gonna basically hemming the carriers on the short side. We're going to do that to all 4. Do the same thing to this side. That is a crappy 1/2 inch. I'm just finger pressing it. You can press it with the iron if you like. So now there's our carriers made. And yes, they are wide. I did that on purpose so they wouldn't get caught on anything and rip, was my thinking behind this. There's a method to my madness, believe it or not. Alright, so I have my back waistband here. So I'm gonna, and I did interface that. That's optional. If you think you need to, do it. If not. So I'm going to center that over this notch here. And I'm going to just baste it in place. Like so, and I'm going to repeat that for the front as well. So there should be, your carrier should just be a little bit bigger than the waistband. And we're making sure we're just basting that in place within the seam allowance. So 3/8 seam allowance. So Cindy taught me this little trick, is to avoid getting your carrier caught when you sew your waistband to the skirt or whatever else. stick a little pin in here to keep it out of the way. Even though it's not a lot of fabric, it holds it out of place, and it's a very ingenious idea that Cindy had there. So we're going to repeat that. We're going to do that. So this is the back. So now we're going to find our back piece of our bodice and sew that to our back, which is right here. This is the back piece. This goes out a little bit. That would be the bottom. So we're going to line these up. Should fit right sides together. And we're going to pin that. Make sure I do, yep. Back. So there is our waistband sewn to the back. The next step is to finish this seam. If you were going to use a zigzag, I would do that. I'm going to serge this and then come back, and you're going to press that seam this way. So side with the notches on the bottom, we're going to match it up. Now the waistband does have an up and down, so it kind of goes out a little bit. So that would be the bottom. You just match it up, and so I'm going to match up the edges first. Stick a pin in. Now my fold has a mark, so I'm going to line that up. Stick a pin in, and the edge. And see if my notches line up. What your seam should look like. This is the back waistband, and I have it the seam pressed. So this is what it looks like on this side, and it looks like I missed some threads. Get those trimmed off. Another one waving at me. Okay, so that's the back. We're going to set that aside. This is the front. If you think you need to stay stitch your neckline, use a small stitch and stay stitch within the seam allowance. But we're doing something different to the neckline. the way I bind it, we're going to be sewing it 3 times. It's not going to stretch, so just set it aside. Don't play with it. Now we are going to make our other fiddly bits, which is the sash. We're going to get that done and out of the way. So, because of the length of my fabric, I'm going to have 3 lengths for my sash. And where's the shorter one? I think this is, are they all the same? Alright, so normally you would just cut. Now the pattern says 4 by 90. So that would be 2 widths of your quilting cotton that you're going to use. And I would use a 1/2 inch seam allowance if you like to sew your sash together. And I just happen to have 2 pieces. You will only have probably 1. Now I'm going to press this open. So I have my sewn together tie folded in half. So there's the middle. And I'm going to fold it in half again without twisting it. Okay. And I'm going to leave an opening. So first I'm not going to start in the middle. I'm going to start past the middle. I'm going to use 1 centimeter seam allowance and a back stitch, and so all the way down. Okay, so now I'm going to put needle down. I don't know. I think in the directions I say 2 inches. Oh, look. I'd say that's almost exactly 2 inches. And I'm going to pivot, and I'm going to, now if you want, you can draw a line, but I am going to line up just past this. This is the end. So I'm going to aim for here on a 45-degree angle. Back stitch. There. And then I'm just going to cut that off. Like so. So that is ready. Can clip this a little bit, but not really necessary. Okay, so now we're going to do the other end. So that's where we started, so we want to leave an opening to make it easy to turn it around. I'm gonna aim for around here. And do the exact same thing on the other side. Okay, the trick for turning this around without using any fancy tools, but your scissors. Now, these scissors are blunt. I don't know. Can you see that better that way? So these are not sharp. If they were sharp on the end, this isn't going to work. If you have a pair of blunt scissors or a flat end of a knitting needle, piece of doweling will work. So what I'm doing is I open up the end that has the point, and I didn't take much to open that. I just pull the two fabrics apart like so and kind of work my finger in there. I stick the scissors in. Do this so you can see. And I just, doesn't matter if the scissors are short. Until you get to the opening. Pull, I'm holding this part, this end. Now this is a good time to push your point out. And I'm going to pull this down a little bit. Trying to find my other point. There it is. There. That looks pretty good. And then I took the scissors out completely and so now I'm going to repeat it at the other end. I'll show you again. These are not long scissors, so just pull that apart. Work it in there. Stick those scissors in. Make sure they're not open or sharp. So by holding the fold and the seam, just pull them, work them down over the scissors. This would work the same with a piece of doweling or a chopstick. Would work good. By the time you find the tool that you need to do this, I have no idea what one it would be, you'd have this all done. Alright, so poke out that end. It might be as good as it gets for that. And I'm going to try and pull that end out a little bit. I can find my other end, or my other point, my turning point, and there. And if you forget to do that, to get your nice angle, you can use a pin to work it out. I'm happy with that, even though it's not a real good point. Yeah, that's a little better. Just work it out on the seam side with a pin to make it a better. But I'm happy with that. So I'm going to pull the scissors out and then very easy. So now we're going to close that opening. I usually press this first. Press this all out and then it's done. I'm going to start where I stopped. Back stitch you could hand sew this, but I'm just going to sew it with the sewing machine. Okay. All right. So there, that is, we just need to press this now, and then we can set this aside. The part of what I'm going to tell you to do next, your pockets will probably overlap if you skip this part. You can make the pockets smaller. So I'm going to do a large stitch, 1/2 inch seam allowance, now, this is really just to aid in your pressing, so you don't burn your fingers. So you're going to want to press that just past your stitching line. Hopefully you can see that. So you want to press it just past the stitching line, just so you can't see it. That way you don't have to unpick it. Now, if you do a smaller seam allowance, your pockets will meet. The pockets are quite large on the dress. That was done on purpose. Now, on the curved part of the pocket, this is also to help you with ironing. Because that is quite a big curve. And I'm just going to gather it a little bit. That one seam I did on the curve right here. And I'm going to take the bobbin thread and I'm going to not try and pull it out. I'm going to do a slight gather, which is also to help you press that curve. So you don't get a pointy curve, you get an actual curve. We don't need to clip it or anything, because this is just, this is all to help in ironing. You can skip this step altogether, but I would recommend you make your pocket smaller. You may not like the results because the pockets will touch. Alright, so we're going to do that to both these pockets. Going to the other pocket. You don't need to gather, it's just enough to get that nice curve on your pocket. You may end up pulling it. You see how that already curves? A nice curve to it. And you don't need to clip it. It's so we don't get the pleats or pointy corners on the other side. Alright, I'm going to press this and show you what it looks like. Alright, So there is my nice looking curve on my pocket. So here's the wrong side. We have it pressed just past the stitching line. You see how the gathers helped do that nice curve on the pocket. It looks really clean on the other side. Hopefully you can see that. So there we have our two pockets. Pockets done right here, pressed. So now we are going to put some binding on the edge or some sort of trim. So I'm going to cut off, make that straight. I'm going to put wrong side, right side to wrong side. So there's my right side. This is the wrong side of the fabric. And if you want to check, see if you're doing it right, stick a pin in it. And then turn it around, because I want my top stitching line to be on the outside. That's why I'm doing it this way. So I'm going to sew it like this, and then flip it, and then I'm going to have my line of stitching on the outside. So I'm taking the right side of the binding, laying it flat to the wrong side of my pocket, and I'm going to do a 1/4 inch seam allowance on this. And you don't want to stretch your binding. Just want it to lay flat. Now I would carry right on and sew the other pocket on there, but this binding is not going to be long enough for both. So I'm going to cut that off. Leave yourself a little bit of room. Now I'm going to do the other pocket. So another piece of binding, which is right here. So I'm going to take the right side of the binding. If you have a plain color, it's not going to matter, probably. So I'm going to finger press it. And I'm going to fold, hopefully you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to fold this down to here, almost meeting the seam line. Edge of my binding to the edge of the pocket, and then I'm going to fold it again. And it's going to just cover up that stitch line that's there, and I'm going to sew as close to the edge as possible. Just go slow, we're not in a race. You can pin this if you want. I don't normally pin things, but so there. So I'll show you again. So that looks nice. And you can see stitching line. So that's what it looks like on the wrong side. That'll give some strength to the fabric. Our pockets are ready to put on the skirt front. I'm just gonna clip my threads so they're not everywhere. So they're not all messy. Okay, so I have one pocket on the pinned onto the skirt front. So I have some red pins there. It's gonna be hard to tell because these are the same color. So this is the other side. So I need to add my pocket and I haven't even pressed these pockets yet. All right, they're going on here pretty good. So if you're a pinner, now's the time. Or if you want to sew your label on your dress, I would sew it on your pocket now before you get it all pinned on here. And if you do, I would put it in somewhere in this area, perhaps, of the pocket. So that's my iron hollering at me. So I'm just gonna pin these. I'm running out of thread. I'm playing thread chicken at the same time. So oh, we get an orange pin. That's a crappy pin. I'm actually loving these little pins. I've never used them before. They are easy to hang on to. I love them. I need to get some more of them. Yes, these are lovely. Okay, so now the time is to top stitch, attach your pocket to the dress. So we're going to top stitch here and then baste here and baste here. So your pocket is not going to be flapping around. So we know this is the top of the skirt because there's notches for the waistband. So you just got to line your pocket up with the edge of the dress. And you can see what I mean here if you didn't turn in that 1/2 inch for ironing purposes. The pocket would meet and overlap because you only have this much room. So you can trim your pockets down. I wouldn't trim them down by a lot, but no more than a 1/2 inch if you want to make them smaller. Now we are going to top stitch our pockets to our dress. I think I'm going to baste it. No, I'm going to top stitch first because I'm running out of thread. That's what I'm doing. Yes, yes, yes. Right. If you want to do a fancy stitch on your sewing machine, that would look nice too. Okay, so there's our pockets of top stitching line right here. Hopefully you can see that. Top stitching line. And I have some basted large stitches across top and the sides within the seam allowance. I think you can see that. And down the side. Large stitches. Just to hold it in place. Because we're going to set that aside. We don't need to sew because we're going to finish the top of the dress. Now the reason why I don't sew the skirt to the top just yet is because there's going to be too much fabric hanging off your sewing machine to do what we're going to do. There's a method to my madness, so if you bear with me. So this is the back of our dress, and we have the front. So the next step is we're going to line up the shoulder seams the best we can. I do line up. And okay. I find this awkward because I'm pinning it. And if you think I'm not pinning very much, this is a lot of pinning for me. So I usually don't pin it at all. I'm just trying to show you. This is where we're going to sew next. We're going to sew 3/8 of the seam allowance all the way along here. And if you do a larger seam than 3/8, your sleeve will be too small. Okay, so I have my shoulder seams pinned and ready to go. So we're just going to sew the top seams, top shoulder seams at a 3/8 seam allowance, which I think I said 100 times. Our shoulder seam sewn, both sides. Now we're going to finish that. And we're not going to sew the sides just yet, so don't get carried away, and I'll explain why here in a second. Our seam on our shoulders are finished, and I have the seam pressed towards the back on both sides. So now we're going to flip it over the right side. And the reason why we're leaving this open is because we are going to finish the armhole. Now you could just roll hem this if you wanted, or you could, there's probably multitude of things that you could do, but we're going to bind it. So we're going to do it the way we did before, because I want my top stitching line on the outside. So we're going to place the right side of the binding. I'm just going to make sure our binding sticks out the end a little bit on the and you can pin this if you so choose. And we're just going to do 1/4 of an inch to get the binding to stay on here. We don't want to stretch it. We're just gonna sew this. It's just easier to do it this way than when you have it all sewn together and working in a tiny space. That binding and our threads. So we're just doing the same thing we did before. You can press this and we're going to roll that down. Going to roll that down to meet the seam and then roll it again just to cover those stitches. So now we are going to bind the neckline. So we're going to do it the opposite way we've been doing it. So we're going to take the right side of our binding and put it on the right side of the back center of our neckline. So this is the back right here, and I'm going to put this here. If you notice there's little hole marks, it's because I just did this backwards. So right around the middle, so I have the binding folded over about an inch or less. And I'll just pin it so you can see what I'm talking about. You don't want to pull or stretch your binding. The bias is so it can hug the curves of your neckline, but we don't really want to stretch it. And we're just going to go along the outside. All the way around. So right side to right side. So we're going to start here and sew around, and then we will overlap our other piece of binding, cut it off around here. Make sense? We're going to use a 1/4 inch seam allowance for this. And we're not going to manhandle the neckline, so we don't want to stretch it. I find it easier not to pin it because I find you have to move it around quite a bit. And I find pins hinder that to keep the binding lined up with your edge here. So you can imagine how awkward this would be if you sewed the skirt on. Just makes it a little bit more heavier to move around. Alright, so we got around to the other side. We're going to snip off our end. I just had enough. So we have an overlap, as you can see. I'm going to pull our inside seam towards the binding, like so. Should look like that. And we're going to sew as close as we can to the edge right here. As close to the edge as we can. So we're going to stay stitch all these layers in place. So the binding and our neckline. So we're going to stay stitch that. Or I guess it's not stay stitching, it's called understitching, sorry. So we're going to understitch. So this is what it should look like. And then this is what it's going to look like on the inside. That is the row of stitching we just did. So now, this is what our dress looks like so far, the top. So we are going to do same as before. We're going to bring our binding. I'm going to make that even because that's driving me crazy. So if you find it hard to flip this because this is not attached, you can always there, I just ran some stitches there to hold this overlap in place because that was starting to annoy me. All right. So now we're going to take this. See how that helped? It's not moving around. Fold the binding to meet this seam line here because we don't want a huge. Now you could press this all the way around. This is why I don't run my binding through one of those binding tools, because this one side I only used 1/4 of an inch, and this side I'm using half the binding to fold it. Does that make sense? So my creases would be off, is what I'm trying to say. So then I'm going to fold that down. And this is going to make such a neat finish. And it's going to keep the neckline secure and keep it from stretching out. And we're just going to go around. So just folding that down to our previous stitching. Because we want to keep the seam as small as possible without getting any twisting. All right. I'm not going to pin it like mad. Like, even if you are a pinner, I wouldn't over pin it. Because actually this is smaller than this. It's going to look really clean and neat when it's all finished. And it is not that hard to do. I think you'll enjoy this little way that we're doing it. So we're ready to start. I'm going to start at the center back because our stitching is going to show on the front. Now where is my center back? I can't even see it. Where'd you go? Where are you? All right. There it is, right here. Get rid of that little thread. All right, so I'm going to start here. And instead of trying to sew blind and sew on this side, our bobbin stitches are going to be showing on this side. And I have a really dark thread for the top stitching. So any mistakes I make are going to show for sure. Right. So I'm lining the edge right up with my presser foot, so it's going to be like a 1/4 inch seam. And the stay stitching is going to keep your binding from rolling over. So that's what it looks like on the inside. And I caught all my binding. And you can see how it pulls it a little bit, because you're sewing a flat piece to something that is round. But that's going to hold that in place. It's not going to stretch out, and it's, when you press this, it'll lay flat. I think it's a nice finish. If it doesn't lay flat, it means you've pulled it somehow, the binding. So we're just going to press that. And now we can attach our skirt to the bottom of our dress. So here's our skirt front that we have here. The pockets are already sewn on. And here is the front of our dress. We know this is the back and this is the front. So we're going to attach the skirt right sides together to the front waistband and the front skirt. We're just going to line up the edge here. We're going to stick a pin in there. Go to the other edge. Line up our edge there. We're going to check our middle. Okay, so now we're going to sew a 3/8 seam allowance across here to attach the waistband to the skirt. And we're going to repeat this process for the back as well. Pressing this dress, we have a nice flat neckline. You can see it's not sticking out. It looks good. And so here is the inside. Get rid of those threads that are sticking out that I missed. So our waist seam is pressed to the inside along here. And here is the back. Now we have to sew it together. Actually, now we can take Cindy's pins out of our carriers. So the carriers that'll press out. So take Cindy's pin out, and the carriers don't stick out too far, but big enough so we can fit our sash through, which is why they were made this way. All right, now we are going to sew the dress together, and then we just have to hem it. So we're getting almost done. All right, so we're gonna line up right sides together of the dress. We'll start at the sleeve. Now you might want to use a clip, but of course mine are on the other side of the room there. I open it up to make sure it's going to line up. No more thread. My goodness. Because we want that to be as even as possible. So I find a clip helps there. So we want that to be nice and even. Now it looks like this is not going to line up, this curve, but it will. So now the next step is to line up your notch on your waistband. And I just open the seam up to make sure my waistband's going to match up. Line it up best I can. This is where I do pin. I do pin at all these intersections. And I do the same thing on this side. I open the seam up to make sure that it's going to line up. And because you have a lot of bulk on that seam, just open it up, and that looks like it's going to line up. So I'm going to hold that and stick a pin in here. And I'm also going to stick another pin there. All right, and then I'm going to go all the way down to the bottom. And when I come to the pocket here, I'm going to backstitch a little bit. So one thing I do to ensure success of my waistband lining up, I sew this section first, and then I sew the whole seam together. Well, let's see if this is going to work. And I do check it while it's on the sewing machine, open this up. And it's not quite lining up. Let's see. There, that might help. Let's open that up and see if it lined up. They're not too bad. I can live with that. Can you see how? It's a little bit off. Not bad. So I'll do that first and then I'll sew all the way down. And do the same thing. Try and keep your shoulder seam lined up as best you can. And important to do 3/8 seam allowance. Do a back stitch, and this will help you line up your curve of your arm. Now we're coming to the pocket, so we'll do a little back stitch because that's another high stress area. Almost ran over a pin. So we have this all sewn together on both sides. So now I'm going to serge it, and you're going to say, well, what about this here? That's going to make a mess. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to leave a tail of the serging thread, so don't cut it off, flush to your sleeve. And I'm going to show you how to tack it, and that way it won't unravel and be a mess. Okay, so my side seams are all serged. This is the opening of the sleeve, and I have a tail of serger thread here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull that. Can't get in the right spot. There we go. I'm going to pull that down, and I'm going to sew it over it. Back stitch a couple times. Okay, so, oh, I didn't catch it. All right, do it again. So make sure you caught it. Okay, so now I'm going to clip it. Now I'm going to tack it again. I'm going to put it towards the back of the dress this way. So you're not going to see that sticking out. And I'm going to tack it probably right here. So you can use the lightning stitch on your sewing machine, which is a little teensy tiny zigzag, or you can just back stitch. Now I would recommend going in this way. So my sewing machine doesn't seem to like sewing over a really big bump. Let's see if it's going to let me. So that is tacked in place. Now you can do that all in one step, or you can do it in the 2 steps. You see that wasn't super successful, but it's not going to come out. It's there. It's not coming out. All right, let's try it again on this side. Maybe I'll be better this time. I'll do it all in one step this time, maybe. So I'm going to pull that thread and we'll try the lightning stitch this time. There, and that part is done. So now we just need to hem the dress. That was more successful this time. Clip all your threads, get rid of that. That's not going anywhere. And you can't even really see that tack mark. So even if you zigzagged your seam, I would still tack it there to prevent it from irritating the skin and keeps it nice and flat. This. Now, I think I only allowed 1/2 inch for a hem. It doesn't need to be long. If you want your hem to be longer, you'll have to add fabric to the bottom when you cut it out. So I just press this, my best guess, at 1/4 inch, and I'm just going to roll it the one time and put a small hem in there. All right. Oh, I'm still on lightning stitch. Okay. All right. I usually start at one of the side seams, that way I don't have my back stitches because I'm using a dark thread right in the middle of the hemline of the dress. And then this dress, short sleeve version, is finished. Just like that. You could put the tie in the front or the back. And I'm sure this tie is long enough that the girls could tie it around twice, maybe. I see another stray thread. Okay, so make sure it's not twisted. And this keeps the tie. I don't tighten it. I just try and make sure these are even, and they are not. I'm going to tie a bow. Perfect. All right, this is a long sleeve version. We're sticking with polka dots today, I guess. I've ran, so this is a sleeve piece. It's kind of an odd shape. And I ran 2 lines of gathering stitches, big stitches across the top of the sleeve. Now these notches here, the only thing they mark is where you start and stop your gathering stitches. They're not for anything else. This notch here just marks the center of your sleeve, which would be your sleeve line. So we are going to gather these up. This is just a design feature. If you don't like the long sleeve, then by all means leave them out, or you can always make them a little bit smaller. So I'm going to gather that in quite a bit and then set that one aside, do this one. Do some at the other end. And we'll worry about making them even later. Now you can see I already have my elastic casing, 1/4 of an inch, already pressed and ready to go. So it's easier to sew these in on the flat. So my top of my dress is already here. And if you're wondering why I have stitching lines sewn here, it's because this fabric is very thin and I use 2 layers of fabric. So we're going to start by pinning at the edge of the fabric, and definitely going to pin this part. We're going to find our middle. Oh, it's almost gathered enough. reason why there's a 1/2 inch seam allowance on the sleeve, all that's going to do is really make the sleeve shorter. So these aren't really full length long sleeves. They're probably like 3/4 sleeve length. Anyway, it's just easier to gather if you have enough room. It was to make your life easier. That's why it's there. Okay, so that one's ready. So I'm going to work on the other one, and then I'll show you what it looks like when we're done. Here's our sleeve. That's what it looks like. It's just to add a little girly feature to the dress, a little without ruffles, and to add a warmth element to it. If anybody wanted to make a corduroy or a denim style dress or what have you. So now we're going to serge that seam right there, and we're going to sew our casing in for our elastic. So I already have it pressed. I'm just turning it over again. This is the size of elastic that I'm putting in there. So perhaps my little channel that I've prepared is a little bit too small. A safety pin if you wish. I'm going to use this bodkin right here. So you just pull your elastic down into it. I'm going to insert this through the casing that I just sewn. There. Now make sure you don't pull your elastic all the way through. So you can put a safety pin there. So I'm going to leave that much hanging out, and I'm going to sew it. And then I'm going to pull this one through without twisting it. It's not going to be a tight elastic. So make sure that you didn't twist it. It's good. So now I'm going to sew this. I made the elastic a little shorter than the original because I felt it was too big. So that's caught. So there, that's not too tight. And then the next step is to sew down the sides of her dress after we sew the skirt on. And we're going to tack this like we did the short sleeve version. So I'll show you what it looks like when it's finished. Skirt attached to this, but I will sew some of this together so you can see what the sleeve looks like and how we will finish off our sleeve, the cuff. All right. So now we're back to a 3/8 seam allowance. So we're going to do the same thing as before, serge, or if you're going to zigzag, and then we're going to tack that in place to keep that seam flat. Sleeve cuff. I'm going to pull that. I'm going to pull it and fold the seam at the same time. And I'm going to tack it. Here and here. It's important to get that, make sure that that elastic is caught.